During the time when witchcraft accusations were spreading, cats, especially black cats, were increasingly associated with witches and even with the devil himself. They were believed to be familiars, companions that helped witches carry out their work, which meant that owning a cat could make you look suspicious, and being a cat could make you a target.
Oh.
It was not a good look to be a cat back. In some parts of Europe, cats were killed in large numbers, sometimes as parts of rituals and sometimes out of fear. But here's where the story takes a turn. At this very same time, Europe is dealing with one of the deadliest pandemics in human history, the Black Death, which we now know is spread largely by fleas on rats. So the theory goes that by killing off the cats, people may have reduced one of the natural predators keeping rat populations in check, which could have made the spread of disease even worse. Welcome to this episode of the You Two Scare Me podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Felice.
And I'm Andy, and we are coming to you from Key West, Florida.
Guess what?
What?
Our event sold out. Our Spirits with Spirits event, which is going to be this weekend, April 11th. It's at the Saint Hotel in Key West. We sold all of our spots.
We are so excited.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
We have our equipment we're getting all ready and packed up. We actually have a REM pod running right now, so if we hear anything,
you'll know.
Yeah.
Something's with us.
But we are amped.
Yes, we're super excited. We're doing all the last minute details, getting everything arranged for the snacks and cocktails and goodie bags. So I'm really excited.
I'm a little bit nervous.
I am too. Just new things, It's
Yeah.
like, it is very exciting, but it is, I don't know. Anytime you try something new, it comes with some growing pains or whatever,
A lot of silly things that we do. So we'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
No, it's going to be great. I'm excited.
It's going to be awesome. Yeah. So, and if you missed this one, don't worry. We're going to be planning some more. So we'll always let you know if we have one coming up. And if you're going to be in town, you should come.
Yeah. It'll be super fun. We'll let you know.
We'll let you know. And also we'll have a lot of information on our social media so you can see how it goes.
Yes. It's going to be awesome.
Well, if this is your first time tuning in, or if you forgot what we do around here, what's up? We're just two spooky girls who love to hear and tell stories about weird stuff, paranormal stuff, creepy stuff, and the unusual.
But don't worry. We respect the forces behind the things that go bump in the night, and we know to keep a safe distance.
Absolutely we do. We're very careful.
Yes.
We're fully aware that we don't know anything or really understand anything about what's happening with any of this business.
That's really accurate. But it's okay. We make sure to laugh and keep it light as we work our way through the strange and unusual. We hope to bring you stories that make you question and give you a chill.
A quick warning before we begin. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Our tales are drawn from folklore, history, and reported experiences, but we don't claim them as fact. Some stories may include sensitive topics, so listener discretion is advised.
Dive into the shadows with us as we bring you haunting tales in this episode of the You Two Scare Me podcast.
Shall we dive in? If you lived a few hundred years ago, it would not take much for someone to accuse you of being a witch. You wouldn't need to be casting spells or standing in the woods under a full moon or doing anything that looked remotely supernatural. Sometimes it was as simple as knowing too much, speaking too freely, or just making the wrong person uncomfortable at the wrong time. And once that accusation was made, it didn't matter whether it was true or not, because truth was never really the point. What mattered was that people believed it. The belief was strong enough to ruin lives, fracture entire communities, and in many cases end in execution. The strange part now is that even centuries later, witchcraft hasn't settled into something that everyone agrees on. It still makes people uneasy, it sparks arguments, it still sits right on that edge between belief and disbelief in a way that's unfinished. Tonight, we're not just talking about witches and the way pop culture has trained us to think about them. We're talking about where these ideas come from, how they spiraled into one of the most intense periods of fear and persecution in history, and why even now witchcraft continues to be one of the most controversial spiritual practices in the world.
I feel like some of my favorite movies and books are about witches.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Me too. Like The Craft. Oh, I love that movie.
The Craft. Practical Magic, a little bit more lighthearted.
Yeah.
Hocus Pocus.
I loved, oh my gosh, what's the show with Piper and on the WB? The Three Sisters, and then there was like, had Shannon Doherty.
Oh.
And then later Rose McGowan came. Oh my gosh, what's the name of the show? Charmed. I loved Charmed.
Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Oh yeah, of course.
Did you read The Witch of Blackbird Pond?
Of course.
Of course you did.
Like in middle school, probably. Yeah. Yep. I love all the stories that are about like books about sisters that are witches or, you know.
Yes.
There's this idea that witchcraft began as something dark, something secretive, something tied to fear right from the start. But that's not actually how it begins. If you go back far enough before the word witch carried the weight that it does now, what you find instead are people who were deeply connected to the natural world and to practices that others didn't fully understand. These were healers, midwives, spiritual guides, people who worked with herbs, who understood the cycles of nature, who were believed to have had access to knowledge that wasn't available to anyone else. Mm-hmm. Maybe some of them read.
Right? Or they just like understood plants.
Yeah. These people weren't automatically feared. In many communities, they were necessary. They were the ones you went to when someone was sick, when something felt off, when you needed help that went beyond what was viable, what was visible and obvious. But as societies began to shift, especially with the rise and spread of organized religion, particularly Christianity through Europe, that perception started to change in a very real and deliberate way. Mm-hmm. Once you establish a system that defines what is sacred, what is acceptable, and what is considered divine authority, anything outside of that system becomes a problem. And this is where witchcraft starts to take on a different meaning. In Christian doctrine, especially during the medieval period, the idea of witchcraft became closely tied to the concept of heresy and eventually to the idea of making a pact with the devil. It wasn't just that someone had unusual knowledge or practiced alternative healing methods. It became the belief that they were actively working against God. That shift is everything. Now you're not just dealing with something unknown, you're dealing with something that is framed as evil. And once something is labeled as evil, it does not invite curiosity. It invites fear, suspicion, and eventually punishment. There are biblical references that contributed to this, including passages that were interpreted as condemning witchcraft outright. Over time, those interpretations became embedded into legal systems and cultural beliefs. So, go ahead.
I have no doubt that if we were alive back then,
yeah.
but like not because we have knowledge about anything, not because we're practicing like magic arts or whatever. No, just because we laugh really loud.
Yeah, we're a little loud, a little unconventional.
What?
We are the weirdos.
But like for real.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, hey, we're dancing. And they're like, oh.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we wouldn't be a good look back
No. Can't hold me down.
So now you have this perfect storm forming. You have unexplained events that people are desperate to make sense of. You have a growing religious authority that defines what's right and wrong, and you have individuals who exist just outside of that definition, like us. All of that begins to collide. By the time you reach the height of the witch hunts between the 15th and 18th centuries, which that's a pretty long time.
Wow.
Witchcraft is no longer a vague concept. It's a full-blown accusation with real consequences. What's important to understand is that these accusations were rarely based on any actual evidence of anything supernatural. They were based on fear, social tension, personal conflicts, and the need to assign blame. And I feel like a lot of times too, it was the need to point the finger away from something that someone was doing. A lot of times, like they're doing something wrong, so they're like, look at that girl, look at Sarah or whoever over there. Yeah. Look what she's doing. She's a witch. Don't look at me having an affair or whatever it was. You know?
Absolutely. Take the heat off yourself. Yeah. But I think that's something that was so scary about it, because could be minding your own business and
Picking
then
mushrooms.
Right.
You're like, I'm just picking mushrooms.
I love mushrooms. And then they're like, ew, look at that weirdo. She's a witch.
Yeah, pretty scary stuff. Crops failed, if livestock died, if illness spread through a household, people needed an explanation. And blaming an unseen force controlled by someone within the community made that chaos feel more manageable. Because if someone caused it, then in theory, it could be stopped. So there's a story that floats around history that feels almost too perfect not to be true. It sits right at the intersection of fear, superstition, and unintended consequences. During the time when witchcraft accusations were spreading, cats, especially black cats, were increasingly associated with witches and even with the devil himself. They were believed to be familiars, companions that helped witches carry out their work, which meant that owning a cat could make you look suspicious, and being a cat could make you a target.
Oh.
It was not a good look to be a cat back then. In some parts of Europe, cats were killed in large numbers, sometimes as parts of rituals and sometimes out of fear. But here's where the story takes a turn. At this very same time, Europe is dealing with one of the deadliest pandemics in human history, the Black Death, which we now know was spread largely by fleas on rats. So the theory goes that by killing off the cats, people may have reduced one of the natural predators keeping rat populations in check, which could have made the spread of disease even worse. So here's the thing. There's no solid evidence that this actually caused the plague or significantly impacted its spread. The Black Death moved through trade routes, through crowded cities, through systems that had much bigger problems than just the number of cats in a village.
But we can also still be angry about it.
Yeah, and the idea lingers. So even if it's not entirely accurate, it captures something that is true about this time period. People were making decisions based on fear. And sometimes those decisions didn't protect them the way that they thought they would. And maybe it did make it worse, you know?
Yeah.
That logic comes at a cost because once suspicion enters a community, it does not stay contained. It spreads just like the Black Plague.
The Black Plague.
Neighbors accuse neighbors. Families turn on each other. Small disagreements escalate into something much more dangerous. In many cases, the people accused were those who were already vulnerable. Women who lived alone, women who didn't conform to expected roles, people who were outspoken, had knowledge that others didn't understand, or they were simply people who had the misfortune of being associated with someone who had already been accused, right? Like guilt by association.
Yeah, so then it's like, Andy's a witch, so is Felice.
Yeah. And once that accusation was made, the system was not designed to protect them. Part of what made these accusations so dangerous was that people truly believed there were physical signs that could prove someone was a witch. They were called witches' marks. And they could be anything from a mole to a scar to a birthmark, anything that looked unusual or couldn't be easily explained. These marks were believed to be evidence of a pact with the devil, something physically tied a person to something dark. And in some cases, investigators would go as far as to test these marks by pricking them with needles, looking for spots that didn't bleed or cause pain, which they took as confirmation. So now you're in a situation where the human body itself becomes evidence, where something completely natural can be reinterpreted as something sinister. Isn't that so sad?
It's awful.
Like you or your little girl, has a birthmark.
Right.
And it is not like the same thing on every person. Like whoever's in charge could be like, oh, that weird mole, oh, must be a witch. It's just like random.
Well, when you're looking for there to be something, you're going to find something.
Oh, that's true.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I think it's just one of those things. As soon as somebody was accused or somebody decided to accuse somebody, they're going to find a way.
Yeah, and they're done. Like, it's done.
Yep.
Yeah, once that happens, there's almost no way to defend yourself, you know? Trials were often influenced by religious belief. Confessions were sometimes forced through extreme pressure or torture. And once someone admitted to witchcraft, even falsely, it reinforced the idea that witches were real and active threats. So, I mean, it created a cycle that fed itself. So it's like you're being tortured. Maybe you think the only way out of this torture is to be like, okay, yes, I'm a witch. And then you've just like sunk yourself.
They're like,
literally.
see,
told you. Yeah, and now we're gonna burn you alive or whatever.
Right.
You
Well,
know?
I mean, it's just like all of the trials that they, like the trials they had to test if somebody was a witch. You're not going to make it out of that either.
Yeah. And if you make it
one
out,
way or
then
another.
they're going to get you a different way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so sad. There's another theory that makes this whole period feel even more unsettling because it raises the possibility that some of what people were experiencing may not have been imagined at all, just misunderstood.
Ooh.
In places like Salem, where some of the most famous accusations took place, there were reports of people experiencing fits, visions, uncontrollable movements, and intense emotional reactions that no one could explain at the time. One theory suggests that some of this may have been caused by something much more physical than supernatural. A fungus called ergot,
Stop.
yes, can grow on rye, which was commonly used to make bread, and when consumed can cause hallucinations, convulsions, and a distorted sense of reality. We talked about this in our last episode when Sophocles and his buddies went into that cave in Eleusis and drank the kykeon. Is that what it's called? Kykeon?
Yeah.
And they got loaded and they had an intense, mysterious experience.
They were just like tripping, and
they
went to the underworld and had all kind of psychedelic experiences.
Yeah. So what if that same fungus was causing people to hallucinate in Salem? I've never heard that theory before. Have you?
No. It like made me think of something else, and I don't think it was in Salem, but there was like a thing where all of these people, like mass hysteria, were like dancing.
Oh, yeah.
Nonstop.
That was in the 1600s, wasn't it?
I feel like it was around that time.
It was like dancing fever or something.
Yeah, something. And it just reminded me of that.
Yeah.
I'm picturing them like, it's like a, Puritan time rave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like,
yes.
But wow, I never heard that.
Yeah, I haven't heard that either.
That's a really interesting idea.
Is. Everybody's just like hallucinating, like, she's a witch, she's a witch.
Yeah, like if you see something weird, and you're like, oh my gosh, she changed her face.
And also, if they didn't know, if it's like if their food was contaminated, it's not like they were trying to get loaded.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean?
It wasn't like ancient Greece.
Yeah. They were a little trying to get loaded in that cave.
Yeah.
But they were just eating their food, and then possibly it was contaminated and making them experience this. Who knows? I don't know if that's, I've never heard that before, but it did come up in my research. So I thought that was so interesting.
Yeah.
So back to Salem, it's possible that some of the behaviors that people were witnessing, the ones that fueled fear and accusations, may have had a biological cause that no one understood at that time. Or maybe it was still just a bunch of jerks bullying each other. That's like also the running theory.
Also strong possibility.
Well, Salem's the example that gets talked about the most. It's just one piece of a much larger pattern that was happening across Europe and beyond. This was widespread fear backed by authority and carried out in very real communities. Eventually, the intensity of the witch hunts began to fade, not because belief disappeared, but because skepticism started to grow. Legal systems became structured, the standards for evidence began to shift, and over time it became harder to justify executing someone based on accusations that couldn't be proven. That's kind of nice.
Yeah. Thank goodness.
The idea of witchcraft never went away, it just changed. That brings us to what witchcraft looks like today, which is where things get complicated again, but in a different way. Modern witchcraft is not one single unified practice. It's a collection of different beliefs, traditions, and personal approaches that fall under a very broad umbrella. You have organized paths like Wicca, which was formalized in the mid-20th century and draws from older pagan traditions, emphasizing balance, nature, and ethical practice. You have people who follow various forms of paganism, which can include honoring multiple deities, working with seasonal cycles, and focusing on a deep connection to the natural world. And then you have a growing number of people who practice in a more individual way, creating their own rituals, their own systems, their own understanding of what witchcraft means to them. For many, it's about intention. If you look at how witchcraft is showing up today, especially on platforms like TikTok, it almost feels like a completely different conversation than the one people were having a few hundred years ago.
I mean, yes.
It's pretty popular right now on TikTok. Instead of fear, you see something that looks fun and inviting. There are videos about manifestation, about setting intentions, about aligning your energy with what you want your life to become. You see people lighting candles, writing things down, creating small rituals that feel personal and controlled and comforting. It's less about power in the sense of controlling the outside world and more about power over controlling your own mindset, your own direction, and your own sense of meaning. For a lot of people, that's exactly the appeal. It gives structure to things that feel uncertain, and it creates a sense of urgency in situations where you might otherwise feel powerless. It turns abstract ideas like hope and focus into something you can physically do. So have you been getting these kinds of things on your feed?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like
all kind of things. It's like, okay, we've got the full moon coming up. It's time to...
Oh, yeah, we're making moon water.
Yeah. And like moon water is an easy one, but like there's other ones about like gather this bundle and put it under,
Yeah,
and then throw it in the ocean or whatever.
People are always like writing something on a bay leaf, like doing all kinds of stuff. Modern witchcraft seems to be about focusing energy, creating a ritual as a way to process emotions, set goals, or feel connected to something beyond the everyday. I feel like today it's like woo woo. I'm woo woo, and people aren't really like calling it. I'm doing witchcraft.
I think too. Like at least in my mind, there's a difference between setting your intentions and trying to like manifest these dreams and goals, and then like saying like, hey, I'm a witch and I'm doing witchcraft. I don't know.
I feel like that too. I feel like there's a line.
I feel like witchcraft is maybe a set of practices, and I could be totally wrong. Like if you're a practicing witch, please let us know.
I feel like that. And it's like something that you're not just going to be like, oh, now I'm doing this if you don't know anything about it.
Yeah. I think it's intentional, and it's like a established sort of, I don't know, too.
Yeah, that's what I've always thought about it. Like it's sort of its own set of things. I don't know. Right. That's what I always thought. But I don't know. Like she said, we could be wrong. And please, if you know something about this, write to us and tell us. Yes. We want to know. These rituals and practices can include things like candles, herbs, crystals, moon phases, and occasionally solstices. But even within modern practice, there is a lot of disagreement. Not everyone sees it this way. There are people both within religious communities and even within established witchcraft traditions who feel like something's being lost in the shift. That reducing witchcraft to aesthetics or manifestation removes the depth, the history, and in some cases, the seriousness of what these practices were originally tied to. Okay. That's understandable. There are others who push back against that completely, who believe that practices evolve, that meaning changes over time, and that people are allowed to find their own way into something without having to replicate it exactly as it was before. So we talked about this before when we were discussing the origins of religions, like with Easter, how we started calling it Easter, and that was really like a pagan goddess, that things change. Practices tend to be dynamic and fluid over time, even if the intent stays the same. So I don't know. I think there's something to both sides of that, like, hey, don't come in and just make our thing wishy-washy. I understand that. And I mean, we see that in Christian churches too, like the Catholic Church, the Orthodox churches, even the Episcopal Church are very strict rituals, very rigid traditions. And then you have evangelical churches are much more fluid and loose in their practices, and there are people on both sides of that have their reasons for that, and there are people on both sides that look at the other side and say that's wrong. So I think it's like that for any type of belief, right? That you maybe think what you're doing is right and what someone else is doing is wrong. If you're not open-minded.
For sure. And I think too, like, if there are people who are practicing and are deeply rooted in, the origins and the, sacred texts and, all of that thing. And then there's like somebody who comes and is like, I'm going to do witchcraft light. And like, I'm just going to throw this out here. I'm going to bury this in the garden. It's going to be cool, but they're not really like, understanding the depth of it or care to, I think that's where it gets tricky, right?
Could be a little bit. It could feel disrespectful.
Right.
For sure. Yeah, I understand that. There are debates about what's authentic and what isn't, about whether certain practices are being taken out of their cultural context, about whether witchcraft is being commercialized or watered down. Then there's the ongoing tension with religion, which has never gone away and never will. Many religious groups, particularly within Christianity, still view witchcraft as something that is incompatible with their beliefs. In some interpretations, it's still considered dangerous, spiritually harmful, or even demonic. And that, of course, creates a real divide, obviously. While some people see modern witchcraft as a form of empowerment or spiritual exploration, others see it as something that should be avoided entirely. There are people who practice witchcraft privately because of family or community beliefs. So they're like sneaking around, burying something in the garden.
Right.
There are people who have left religious environments where these practices were strongly condemned. There are ongoing conversations about whether witchcraft can exist along certain religious identities or whether it fundamentally conflicts with them. So I think that there are people who use parts of these practices and they don't give it the label of witchcraft. You know, I think even to me that word feels aggressive. That's different than like, I'm setting an intention. It's different than like, I'm doing witchcraft, you know?
And I think that the associated what do I say, like connotation or whatever, you know, the way that people view it. As soon as you say witchcraft, oh my gosh, then that's immediately brings to mind like, I don't know,
like scary stuff. Well, also all the media that we process is it's scary stuff, you know, and it's dark. And I mean, there's probably also just realistically, there's some dark witchy things that go on, I'm sure, you know what I mean, and all the different types of practices. I mean,
to be fair, there's also some really terrible things that happen under the guise of like, oh my gosh, mainstream religion too, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's always gonna be bad people doing bad things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's always gonna be good people doing good things. And it's all the lens you look at it through, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Even outside of religion, there's skepticism. There are people who see witchcraft as purely psychological. So as a structured way to focus intention and create meaning, and others who believe there are real mysterious forces at work that we don't fully understand. So you could see it both ways. I mean, it makes both of them make sense, because it's like, if you are setting an intention, well, that's also kind of the same as setting a goal. You're just putting your mind to something and then you're doing what you have to do to make it happen, right? Or you could say, oh, I'm calling that to me from the universe. You know, you could look at it both ways, you know. And it's also like, I forgot what the law is, but it's one of those things where if you start to like yellow cars, then you're going to see yellow cars all the time. You know, you just start to recognize those things, whatever it is in your life. So if you're like, oh, I'm setting the intention to do this thing, then you're going to notice people doing that thing around you, and you're going to start to do that thing, whatever it is. So I think, you know, both sides of that are really interesting. And, you know, we are very interested in the unknown and the unusual things. And I think that we tend to believe in mysterious forces around us, you know?
Yeah. But we don't know what causes them. You know, we don't know. Is it your mind? Is it something supernatural? You know, like, we don't know. But
it's fun to think about.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Even now, witchcraft sits in this strange space where it is both ancient and modern, both feared and embraced, both deeply personal and publicly debated. Maybe that's why it continues to hold attention the way it does, because it never fully resolves or becomes one thing. It stays just certain enough to keep people questioning it. And if you look at the bigger picture, it's not really about whether witchcraft is real in the way that people once feared that it was. It's about what it represents. It represents power that isn't easily explained, people operating outside of established systems, and the tension between belief and control. Historically, that tension has had very real consequences. Whether you see witchcraft as spiritual, symbolic, psychological, or something else entirely, the fact that it has persisted for this long through fear, through persecution, through reinvention, that says something. Most ideas don't survive that kind of pressure, but this one did. It's still here, still evolving, still making people uncomfortable, and still raising the same question it always has. When we look at witchcraft now, the real question becomes, are we reacting to the practice itself or to the fear and history we've attached to it? What do you think? What do you think about all that?
Gosh, I don't know. I think historically it was so unfair.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first thing,
Yeah.
you know? As far as people, I mean, I think there could be people out there who have powers, who are able to harness, I don't know,
All kinds of powers.
all kinds of powers that, you know, and I don't know why. I don't know why they can. I don't know what they know. But I think that they can. But, you know, perhaps they do just use more of their brain than we do. Or perhaps they're more in tune with like a whole nother plane of existence than we are. You know, I don't know. I don't know what the reason behind it is, but I do think there are some pretty magical people out there. I don't. And then do we automatically label somebody magical as a witch? You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's so interesting. And every single time we talk about a new topic, in my mind, everything becomes less separated. Like, okay, this is a ghost, this is a witch, this is this is a soul, this is an alien, whatever. You know, like, to me, every time we talk about something new, I'm like, oh, maybe this is all people doing different things with energy, and it's all just about energy.
Maybe.
Or maybe our brains, like we've talked about before, maybe our brains are only set up to do a certain amount of things, but there's other people that are able to unlock other parts of their brain, and then they can do different kinds of stuff with them. Or, you know what I mean? To me, like, as we talk about all these different topics, they sort of start to meld in together, which I think is so interesting.
I think so too.
They're becoming more intertwined in my own thoughts.
I think so. I mean, yeah, I think too that we see, based on our algorithm on social media, we see a lot of, we're inundated with,
That's true,
you know, all of this weird stuff. And then I think, though, the more you see, then the more you question, and then you think about things, right? And you're like, there has to be something more, something we can't see, or something we don't know how to do yet, or, you know, whatever the case may be. So I don't know. As far as, you know, witches and witchcraft and things like that, like, I don't know what the set in stone practices are, you know, and I don't know like what the line is when you're,
I don't know any of that,
you know,
either.
But I do think that there are people who have abilities of some sort, you know, and even going back to, like, if we're talking about indigenous people and shamans and medicine men and things like that, right? They were able to do something, and whether that was just use herbs effectively to heal people or unlock, you know, things within other people, something.
And that's what these ladies were doing way back in the day too. You know, also, they were using herbs, and they were willing to go and help somebody have a baby or whatever. You know, they were willing to go and help and get their hands dirty and whatever. And then that is the thing that got them in trouble. That's so sad. You know?
I think the thing that really bothers me when I reflect on that sort of thing is, you know, they were part of their community and they were helping people in all these different ways until they looked at somebody the wrong way, or, you know, somebody interpreted something a certain way, and then they were shunned, and it happened like over and over. But yet they were always the ones who were, you know, taking care of others and going somewhere in the middle of the night to help somebody who was sick. And, you know, I hate that so much.
It's a tough part of our history, I think, as a world. You know?
I mean,
Okay.
Wow. Well, thank you. That gives me a lot more to think about now.
Yeah, now you're ready.
I'm ready. Are you ready for Somebody Told Me? So this is just a quick little story, and it actually comes from my mother-in-law.
Oh, Marlene.
Yeah, this is from Marlene. So she's going to be so excited when I tell her that we use it. Okay. So I'm just going to read the message that she sent me, just how it is.
Okay.
I'm finally getting around to sending you my ghostly experience via text, if that's okay. I wasn't sure what DM was or how to get through. Anyway, on the morning of March 3rd, 2015, I was being prepped for my total left knee replacement at our local hospital. I'd never had surgery before, and to say I was nervous doesn't even express my feelings. I found out later that my surgeon almost canceled the procedure since my blood pressure was higher than is normal for me. My mom passed away in April of 2001. I'd ask her during my nighttime prayers to help me through this surgery because in my eyes, my mom was one of the strongest people I know because of all the medical issues and surgeries she had had later in life. Anyway, I was able to take a walk to the restroom prior to going to the OR. As I was walking down the hall back to my holding room, there was a nurse with a clipboard leaning over my husband's shoulder. As I got closer, I heard the nurse say, "Margaret K, looking for Margaret K." My husband pointed to the dry erase board in my room, which had clearly Marlene Z listed along with my procedure, surgery time, and my surgeon's name. My husband said as he pointed, "Marlene Z, there's no Margaret K here." The nurse looks back at her clipboard, looks up to the dry erase board, and back at the clipboard and says, "How did I get Margaret K out of Marlene Z?" My mom's name was Margaret Komarinsky. I truly believe my mom was there with me and wanted to show me that she was. I asked my husband later in the day if that really happened, and he said it did.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I had asked my mother-in-law before. I said, do you think she was there? Did you feel her?
Yeah.
And she's like, I did feel like she was there, kind of looking out for me, helping me through it because it was a really difficult time for her.
Yeah.
And she's like, I just felt her around me and felt like her love and stuff.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
So I think, a lot of times you have to be open and recognize these little signs and signals that your, loved ones send you from the other side. And I think once you kind of think about it, you're like, wait a second. Yeah.
We're not alone.
Yeah. And I always love the idea that, your mom or, somebody who is so important to you, who is on the other side still worrying about you, watching over you, taking care of you.
Yeah.
But I love those little signals that people send.
Yeah. That is awesome. That's so special.
Yeah. So thanks, Marlene. Thanks, Mama Marlene, for sharing.
Thanks, Marlene.
And thank you all for listening to this episode of the You Two Scare Me podcast. Have you checked out our website, you2scaremepodcast.com? You can find blog posts about our episodes, cool photos of us, and links to buy all of our spooky gear.
Listeners, do you like what you hear? Help us reach more ears by sharing the show with your fellow weirdos, subscribing to our YouTube channel, and joining our Patreon. The link is in the show notes. We really need more YouTube subscribers. I have 87 very loyal subscribers.
Wow, thanks, guys.
But we need more.
Yeah, just subscribe. Like and subscribe. You can like binge them all sometime when you're at the airport or in the car or who knows where.
Heck yeah.
You can also help us by rating and reviewing us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget to check us out on social media. We've been working really hard on our social media lately. Find us on Instagram at you2scareme_podcast or on our Facebook page, You2Scare Me. You can even follow us on TikTok. Just search You2Scare Me Podcast. No spaces.
Remember to send us your own spooky stories for our Somebody Told Me segment at you2scaremepodcast@gmail.com. That's YOUTWO scaremepodcast@gmail.com.
Thanks for wandering through the shadows with us.
Until next time, stay curious and beware what lurks beyond the light.